Welcome, everybody.
Hello, welcome.
Hello, welcome.
Bonjour. Mikisekwe Indigenous, Namexipink and Duanchi, Atikamek and Duatem. My English name is Kaaren Dannenmann, and I'm from Trout Lake, Ontario. Trout Lake is the homeland of my mother's people, and it's from those relatives that I learned everything that I know about being on the land, relationship to the land, and all our relations, learning all the ways in which we show respect to the land and our relations to the water, the air, and fire. And it's one of the most important things in my life to have learned. I consider myself not having ever graduated from school or any school, that I learned from the best from my aunts, my uncles and cousins, but also from my children and grandchildren. They've been very important teachers to me. And hopefully I'll be able to share some of those stories during this presentation. But miigwech for being here.
Ngwech. Okichita Penansikwe Indigenous, Namexiping and Donji, Mikasi Dodam. My English name is Marney Vermette, and I am the proud daughter of Kaaren, oldest daughter, and I live in Red Lake, and we'll show you on a map where that is, but northwestern Ontario. Most of my career, I'm a nurse by trade, and most of my career has been in northwestern Ontario, and as a way of showing my responsibilities to being Indigenous is to give back to my people. And so I work primarily in the north with my people. And so this initiative, the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle, is a part of how I've dedicated my career and my and showing my responsibility to my people is to give back to the youth. And so we are the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle. And sorry, I'll show you. We have a slideshow. So bear with me because I'm getting started before I'm sharing. Okay, so we can't see anybody anymore, but we see our slides. So the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle. So Kiishkimansi is, in English, is a kingfisher. And so kingfisher is the clan in which was given to the Vermette family in ceremony through by an elder from Lac Seul. So Kiishkimansi is a not-for-profit organization, and we became incorporated in 2022. And we have 3 directors. So that's myself, my husband Mark, who's in the middle there, and then my mom. So it's a family affair. And through this presentation, we'll be talking a bit about the history of our people and our community, as well as talking about the initiatives within Kiishkimansi. So this slide, I just wanted to show some perspective as to where we're located. So Ontario is a very large province, and a lot of people, when we say we're from northwestern Ontario, they think of Thunder Bay or North Bay, but don't realize how large the north really is. So Red Lake is where we're currently sitting here today. And just to the north west of Red Lake is Trout Lake.
Northeast.
Northeast? Northeast. Sorry. So that's Trout Lake is between Pakanjikam and Red Lake, and it's a remote community. You can only access it in the winter by snow machine. And then in the summer, you can walk by trail to the lake and boat across, or else by float plane. The Trout Lake, the Anishinaabe way of saying Trout Lake is Nemexaping. And so the Nemexaping Anishinaabe, which is the people of Trout Lake, and my mom is going to share a little bit more about the history of our people, as well as the impacts to our community.
So on top of the page is Trout Lake, Nemexaping, and there's a river that goes, you follow the red line, and it goes all the way down to Ear Falls, where there is a dam. And that dam is on the western part of the lake called Lac Seul. At the end of the line is where the community of Lac Seul is, the First Nations of Lac Seul. In the old days, like before treaty, and our people, the Nemexaping Anishinaabe, paddled that distance it took about a week to 10 days, but they spent the summer in the Lac Seul area and visited with relatives that came from there. And when the summer was nearing its end, and the people saw that the mountain ash berries were getting bright red, they knew it was time to head back home. And they knew that the wild rice would be ready to be picked at that time. So there's several wild rice fields near Trout Lake. And after the wild rice harvest is done is the harvest of the whitefish and trout, which are spawning in September. So they stayed in Trout Lake for that time. And then after the fish spawn is done and that harvest has been prepared for the winter, then the families would disperse to different parts of Trout Lake, or north of Trout Lake, or east of Trout Lake. Some went back down the river a ways to their winter hunting and trapping areas. The Anishinaabe who lived that migration system knew where all the medicine plants were, and often it's only during that trip to Lac Seul where they're able to harvest those medicines. A lot of those medicines were especially for the women who sometimes had problems with childbirth or shortly after childbirth. And the midwives all knew those medicines and carried them. Let's go back. Treaty 3 happened in 1873. The communities of Lac Seul and Trout Lake didn't sign on to the treaty until the following summer in 1874, and that's called the Lac Seul Adhesion. In that year was when all the First Nation communities were basically created, when their areas were what's the word?
Like defined, or were they reserves?
They were defined by
by the treaties, by the reserve line.
Yeah, but they had special people who were hired by the government to map out the boundaries of the treaties. That in the fall they got to Lac Seul and finished Lac Seul, but it was already November and they didn't want to go north to map out any more treaties. So they left and they never came back. So Trout Lake people never had a reserve. And we've always decided, no, we're happier without a reserve. We feel very connected to our area, to the land and the waters, and we're very knowledgeable about our history there, and that's very important to us. In 1925, gold was discovered in Red Lake, and that brought one of the biggest gold rushes that the province of Ontario has seen. And it's still happening. There's still gold being discovered here. New mines are being built. And for us in Trout Lake, the gold rush affected us in many ways. One of the things was that the dam that was built in Ear Falls, that disrupted our migration systems. And it was in 1960, the last time anybody traveled that system, came up to Trout Lake to harvest wild rice and then paddled back to their trapping areas east of Ear Falls. In the 1950s, that's when the residential school system really impacted our people, and that's when airplanes came and picked up children, and that was followed in the 1960s by the scoop and the 70s as well, and that had a really destructive effect on our community, and we were very much dismembered. A lot of our people, when they were taken away, did not come back. The ones that were taken by the two scoops were starting to make their way back home in the late 1980s and 1990s. And they came from places like Florida, Texas, BC, Yellowknife, and the Maritimes. And today, there's still a lot of our people that are there that have never been able to reconnect with us. So in the 1950s and 60s, tourist camps took over control of the lake. And a lot of our community cabins were burnt down by the Department of Lands and Forests, which were the predecessor of MNR. And by the year 2000, there was nobody living on the lake anymore full time. And our family decided this wasn't going to stay like that. And we decided that we would have community gatherings to bring people back, and that we would bring our children back. One of the things that my mother said was that in the wintertime, she wanted the lake to once again be full of the tracks of children. And that's one of the things that really kept us going. My great-grandfather, this is Kiishik, pictured in these two photographs here. I remember reading a book when I first moved out of Trout Lake in 1984, and I found the book, and the lower picture was in it, and that was the first time my mother had seen that picture of her grandfather. The other photograph was found by a relative of ours on eBay, and she promptly bought it and sent it to me, and we've been using it for our our family charts.
Yeah, I was just gonna add that Sam Kijik, he was born in Trout Lake in the early 1800s and was the leader of our people. His descendants number over 1,200 people living all throughout Turtle Island. Oops. Okay, we kind of talked about this already, but you talked a bit about the history and how the impacts of the residential schools, the 60s and 70s scoops.
And the elders of our community, while they were still living, often talked about the children who were taken away, and also the children who don't know the land as well as the children used to in the past. And that's one of the visions we have for our wellness camp. In the early 2000s, and we started doing community gatherings, and we bring people home from Winnipeg, Thunder Bay, wherever people could come from to come back to learn their homeland of Trout Lake. And one of our exercises is we had a great big map about 8 feet by 8 feet, and we all, and our children as well and grandchildren, they drew pictures where they wanted to live on Trout Lake and what they wanted their place to look like. And this is only three of the three photographs, but it's really interesting to see how they want a log house, they want an outhouse, they want a little tiny a tiny house, and boats and canoes and this person, I'm not exactly sure I recognize everything, but they did want a teaching lodge. I remember them describing the teaching lodge here and how they wanted a dock at their place and a dock where their boat could be tied to, and they wouldn't have to worry about their boat drifting off if a wind came up. This is one of my grandson's drawing of where he wanted to live, and actually this cabin was already built, and he really loved that cabin, and he wanted to go back there. And I thought when he was drawing those people there, those were his kids, but that was his immediate family there. And he talked about how in the wintertime he wanted his own snow machine, and he wanted his own boat and motor. He wanted to be able to have people living close by. So lots of dreams of being home.
So the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle really came about based on all those visions and all those people wanting, all the Trout Lake community members wanting to come home and to learn their ways. And so when we were out in Trout Lake, we have a trap line, and that's how we're able to be out there. And so there's just a few of us that actually go out to Trout Lake. And so we were trying to figure out a way, how can we bring our people back and provide an economic base, but also, meet the needs of our youth who are struggling. And so we came up with the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle, and really that was the goal, was to bring back our community members and our children. And for me personally, Trout Lake is very healing for me. The work I do in the north can be sometimes very hard, emotionally and spiritually. And so when I come out of the north, I come home to Trout Lake, I find it just so very healing for me in a holistic way. And so being on the land, being near the water, being in the quiet, having those teachings around me from all my relations is very healing. And so that was really the goal of the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle, was to bring our people back and to meet the needs of children. So we just started brainstorming, talking about, what kinds of things can we do and how can we utilize the gifts and skills of our people. And so we talked about, there are so many of our people that have these gifts and skills that could be shared with the youth. We have our knowledge keepers, we have nurses, we have teachers, we have social workers, we have pilots, we have all artists. We have all these gifts and skills within our community that we want to share with our youth. So with the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle, as with our teachings about how it takes a community to raise a child, we know that with our community members, we can do that. So we put together a business plan. We met with our chief and council, and we gained support to move forward, looking for funding so that we can do this important work.
So one of the things that we had to do was to find a site for this wellness circle, this camp that we could bring the children and youth home to. And we found one. It's on a large island in Trout Lake, and its Anishinaabe name is Atikamekaminis, which is Whitefish Island. And this is the beach. It's a very beautiful beach, a long beach on a western facing shoreline. And when we checked it out, we found that there was a really nice flat level area just above the beach, and just perfect to put our buildings on. And so we started very slowly, and it's still slow, but it's happening.
Yeah, you can see from the air the beautiful long beach, the picture to the right.
Oh, yes, there it is.
Mm-hmm.
The water this year was very low. That year, when that picture was taken, it was very high, and the beach was rather small, actually. But I think this year the beach was almost all of that area that you can actually see of the beach underwater. Beautiful, beautiful beach.
Do you talk about the ceremony?
Before we started clearing the land, we did a ceremony there. We took our drum and our bundles, and what we wanted permission to do that, to build there. And we wanted permission from the land and the waters and from all our relations there. And when we were done and we were getting ready to go back in the boat, an eagle flew by and circled us. And it was like, that was our permission. Mm-hmm.
So we met, as I mentioned earlier, Lac Seul is the community that we have status in the reserve we belong to. And as mentioned, with the history of Trout Lake and how connected we are with Lac Seul, even though it's quite far. So we met with Chief and Council and we talked about our vision and talked about, or they know the history, but just, wanting to bring some of those Lac Seul youth out to Trout Lake, to meet even their families, from other communities. And so we described and we talked about our vision and what we wanted to do, and they were very, very supportive. Chief and Council has been very supportive. We got a BCR from them to support Kiishkimansi. They wrote a BCR about us building and making trails on the land for our programming, and also because most of the funding had to flow through Lac Seul. They've been very supportive in, having that relationship with us where we apply for funding and it flows through Lac Seul to the Kiishkimansi Wellness Circle. So the funding we did receive so far, this is our second year of receiving funding from Choose Life, which is a suicide prevention initiative through ISC, Indigenous Services Canada. So through that funding, we had proposed doing 6 land-based activities throughout the year. We planned 2 summer activities, a fall activity, and we'll talk a little bit more about those activities in detail in a few slides, but 3 winter activities. So 6 activities throughout the year where the youth would come out to Trout Lake for 1 week.
One of the winter events is during the March break, and some of the activities that we do is setting a net, teaching them how to use hand tools to do the work, and a lot of they're able to set nets back home in Lac Seul, but they often use motorized tools, and this way they learn how to use needle bar to make a hole in the ice, and they were very excited about learning that. I was surprised at that.
Yes, because it's a lot of work. It's physically very demanding.
Yeah, and pushing the jigger under the ice and having them follow it. Sometimes they have to crawl just to find it. It makes a little sound as it scrapes on the ice underneath. And then when the rope is at its marked spot where we have to find the jigger and make another hole in the ice and pull it up, and then we'll have a rope under the ice with which we'll pull the net and then sink the net with a couple of rocks and a rope tied to a stick on top of the ice. So yes, they were very excited about that. They really enjoyed the skidoo rides. When they come to Red Lake, they stay at a hotel, and then they get a ride up the road where the snow machines are. And then it's about 16 kilometers to the first cabin. And the first cabin is where we have our lunch and our snacks, but it's also a site for other winter activities. There's a game that we play in Red Lake it's snowshoe baseball. So it's like a regular game of baseball, except that it's in the snow and the team has to wear snowshoes.
Yeah, it's always a fun game. So another winter initiative that we did last year was during Family Day, and it actually coincided with some of the we worked together with the community and Red Lake where they were having Family Day festivities. So my mom was doing a presentation on how to prepare moose nose, which is a delicacy for our people. And so she had a fire pit where she singed the nose and scraped the hair, and then it was boiling the nose. And then the youth were helping out all along the way with each step, and then were able to try the delicacy of moose nose. Some liked it, some didn't. Very smoky flavor, but it's a delicacy for our people. We also went out to Trout Lake by snow machine for the day, where we took them into the bush and we talked about the gifts of the birch tree. And so before, taking from the tree, we would, talk about that ceremony of, laying tobacco and asking permission and saying what we're going to be using its gifts for. And so the youth went out into the bush and did all those ceremonies and picked some birch bark, and we made feast bowls for various upcoming ceremonies. So they were taught how to use and how to make those feast bowls as an activity that we did.
Can I just refer back to the?
Oh, yeah.
So one of the things that we talked about when we were gathering the birch bark was that often elders will need something to start their fires with. And so they came back to my cabin with a nice big bag of birch bark. And that's what I used over the winter to start my fires. I've heard since that time that they have been doing that, helping elders with their wood pile and chopping wood and gathering birch bark for them. So it was really nice to know that it was going full circle. Some of the summer activities are learning how to use, is that a paddle board?
Yes.
Learning how to use a paddle board. And of course, safety is always an issue. So we make sure that they have life jackets on whenever they're on the lake. They've been very good about following those directions. And in fact, when we first arrive at the camp, we spend about the first hour making an agreement of all the ways that we have to behave in order to make the camp a safe place and a fun place and respectful. So they were taught to go fishing. They go with 1 or 2 adults per boat, and then off they go and bring back supper sometime. Behind the place where our tents are put up is a rather big hill, but at the top is a nice flat little area that's perfect to have a teepee. And so we put up a teepee when they first arrived, and that was always a lot of fun and laughter. But the teepee became a place where we would have our morning circles. We begin the day with a gratitude circle and make plans of what our activities are going to be.
Yeah, lots of so this past summer we actually had some knowledge keepers come, like Tom Chisel from Lac Seul came and he brought his water drum and showed us how that worked and talked about all the teachings of the drum. We had Lawrence Anjikanab, another knowledge keeper, come out, and they actually got to make their own hand drums. And so he came out and did the blessing and the ceremony for those drums that they made. And then one of our artists, well known, becoming well known, is Storm Anjikanab, and she and her partner have run a tourist camp across the lake, and so she would come for the day and do different artist activities with the youth, where she would do rock painting, and last summer they actually painted their hand drums. And there's a short little video here that Storm had done up, and it does have music, but it doesn't, you won't be able to hear it. So it's just her video of her coming from her camp over to the site and the work she did with the youth. So it's pretty quick, but I'll just play it here. And her grandmother and her aunt were also at our site, and they were our cooks for that summer. So it was a nice little family gathering. Storm coming across the lake. There's your grandma, our cook. And that was actually our cook tent, and that's the site from the teepee. We had a fish fry that day. Those are our lodges. We stayed from the tent. And here she is painting with me. One of the activities was they had to walk down the beach and pick their own rocks. Get all the supplies out to the site, and that's how the youth come out there in the summer, is by boat plane. So that's just a quick little video that Storm did up for us. Oh. So wild ricing is another activity. It's done in the fall and in mid-September. So there's lots of nice, beautiful, well, depending on the year. This year there wasn't as much of a harvest, but the year before, when these pictures were taken, we actually partnered with Devin Parks. He's one of my relatives, and he has a wild rice business called Flying Wild. And so they have a cabin, a log cabin out on Jackfish Bay, which is a part, is it to the northwest of east? I'm backwards with my directions, but so northeast side of Trout Lake. And so we partnered with him, and we took the youth there, and he was able to show the youth the modern day way of harvesting rice, which was on an airboat. So the picture to the bottom right, you can see it's just like a big scoop at the bottom where he had gone a couple passes through the wild rice fields, and then the youth came and were filling up the bags with wild rice. We also took them out and showed them the traditional harvesting way of wild rice, where we took them in canoes and worked on collecting wild rice in our canoes by knocking with long sticks, folding over with the wild rice stalks over the canoe, and then tapping on them, and then the rice just nicely falls into the canoe. And then the way we also processed the manomen, or wild rice, the traditional way. And so we did the knocking, so the collecting, and then we did the parching, where you heat up the wild rice on a big open fire in a big cast iron pot, and just like heated up the wild rice. And then the next step is called the threshing, and that's where we put the rice on a tarp, and then the youth were with their moccasins on would stomp gently on the wild rice. And then the last step is the winnowing, and that's where you can see in the basket there, in a big birch bark basket, you put the wild rice and you flip it up into the air, and that's the wind takes away the husk, and then by the end, you on the bottom of the birch bark bowl is the wild rice that's been processed in the traditional way. So we started off with a big, nice pile and ended up with a tiny little handful. But that's okay, because we were also feeding the birds and the animals with what fell on the ground. I know, like, during one of the sharing circles, some of the youth talked about like how they were very appreciative to be out there, and talked about one of the things that they were excited about was learning the modern way and also the traditional way of harvesting. Also, one of the youth out there, one of the evenings, we took them fishing and they caught their first lake trout. So they were pretty excited about that.
In late October or November is when we plan for their trapping activities. And they come to Red Lake here for 3 days. And on the first day, they'll be making marten boxes. And it's about a 3-hour exercise with them, because we also want to make sure they're safe. And we teach them how to use the tools in a safe way, and get them to build their boxes. And at the end, when they're done, we give them an opportunity to paint their marten boxes. And some of them have painted flowers on them, and some of them paint animals, but really, really striking. And it's nice to see those in the bush. The middle picture is them learning how to set a trap. And again, setting traps, you really have to concentrate on being safe. You don't want anybody catching their hands in a trap. And so there's tools that you use to make sure that's safe way to handle the traps. The last picture is students learning how to skin an animal. So last year, I think we had 2 martens, and they learned how to skin the animals. And so they will be doing that this weekend, actually. Looking forward to that.
Yeah, so the youth we're doing that again this weekend. They're actually traveling on their way from Lac Seul as we speak. So excited to get that going. Also just wanted to talk a little bit about the trapping and how there's a lot of teachings that are given about how we show respect for our relations, especially the relations that we're trapping, and share about the ceremony that goes around trapping. So it's not just the actual skill of trapping, it's the talking about the ceremonies and those practices, so that it's done in a good way.
So for example, for the marten, when we set the trap, and the trap is in the box, and the box is nailed to a tree, then we'll put tobacco down on the ground there, and we're asking the animal if it's okay for us to be doing this. When the animal is skinned and the pelt is on its drying board, then what we do with the carcass is again another ceremonial way where we'll take it back in the bush and again with tobacco, and do the practices that we're saying thank you to Creator and thank you to that animal for the gift of its life. Some animals, like the beaver, when we are trapping beaver, they have 6 ceremonies, and we haven't taught them yet how to set beaver traps, but that'll come someday.
Baby steps.
Yes.
Yeah, so actually this weekend we're also partnered with M&R and they're coming to teach the youth about orienteering. So we're going to be using compasses and we're going to go up into the bush and we're going to have an activity where it's like a scavenger hunt where they have to go around the bush using their compasses to find different prizes hidden throughout. So challenges and future needs. So you can see all the wonderful successes. We also try and focus on our successes, but there are challenges and future needs of the program. One of them is, of course, sustainable funding. So every year we have to apply for funding through Choose Life and through our partnership with Lac Seul. And so it would be nice if we didn't have to do that every year. And so looking for opportunities and really appreciative too as well with our work with the Lawson Foundation and their contributions to our activities as well. We would also like to increase our youth activities to once a month instead of the 6 times a year. So that would be nice if we could increase those activities. We do see a lot of returnees, lots of youth that we come back. They're almost like they're our little children. We have 3 girls that come there. Actually weren't able to come this week, but it's just like a family, and it's a growing family, and it's nice to see some of those youth come back. And when we go to Lac Seul, they come up to us, and yeah, it's just nice to have those relationships and to see them grow throughout the years. Staffing is another future need as we grow, to have full-time program coordinators. It takes a lot of work for us to do this work. We do have some funding for program coordinators, but it would be nice if it was a full-time commitment. Right now we all have full-time jobs and we do this on the side. So it's really would be nice if it could be just a full-time commitment. Adequate clothing for the youth when they come. So that's been a challenge. One of the things we do when we first meet with the youth and they come to Red Lake is have a look at what clothing they're bringing, because when we go into the bush, it's you need the proper gears to be safe and warm. And then one of our also challenges is the infrastructure. So as you saw in the video and some of our photos, at our site where we have the youth, we have the prospector tents, and so that just limits our ability to be out there full time and year round. Right now it's mostly in the summer we can be out there, and then in the winter we have to stay in Red Lake and do day trips to Trout Lake because we don't have the adequate facilities where we can keep them out there for the full time. And that's the end of our presentation. So miigwech for this opportunity and for listening. And if anybody has any questions, please feel free to ask.
Yeah, you can unmute yourself or put a hand up or write something in the chat if you have a question for Marnie and Kaaren. Thank you so much for that presentation. Give a couple minutes for questions. A couple people had to leave early. Oh, thanks, Wanda. She clarified that BCR is a band council resolution.
Oh, yes, thank you.
Do you get kids from like Sandy Lake or anything? Or is it all from
So right now, because our funding is from Lac Seul, it's just the
Right.
Lac Seul. And then we also any Trout Lake community members, so they might not be Lac Seul band members, but if they're descendants of Trout Lake, then we invite them to come as well. We actually had one youth, was it last summer? It was so nice because they got to meet each other and learn. We did an activity of how we were all related. And so it was really cool at the end. One of the little guys was like, "Hey, so you're my cuz? We're cuz?" And he was just like, so that was the big joke. They were calling each other cuz all weekend. It's just a nice way to be related too.
Alan left a comment saying, thank you, very informative, and is climate change affecting the program?
Mhm. Yeah, definitely those transition months, right? Like November is usually like we can't really get out there because out to Trout Lake because you can't go by boat because the ice is freezing, but yet it's not frozen enough for us to get out there. Yeah, so we are looking at alternate ways to get out to Trout Lake, like looking at different trail systems so that we can get to our site without having to snow machine across the big part of the lake. But yeah, definitely those transition months are
They're a lot
affecting.
longer.
They're longer, yeah.
C. Doc Stater commented, it sounds like a great program that you're running. And Christine said, we have a call for proposals at Chamonix Foundation on January, and then she provided a link there.
Ooh.
So we'll copy that out of that chat and we can send that to you, where you can probably see it too. So, and then she thanks you for the presentation. Very interesting. Yeah, so I think if there aren't any more questions, we'll let everybody get back to their day. And thank you again, Marnie, Kaaren, so much for sharing all this with us. So awesome. So great, great to see the kids doing all that stuff. Awesome.
Yeah. So fun.
Yeah.
Such rewarding work.
Excellent. Okay, well, everybody take care, and we'll see you next time we do one. Okay, thanks.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.